Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar this month. We are excited to have a guest participant. We'll talk about that in a second. We're going to focus today around, some experiences around how do you build this OT security program. So how do you take all the various elements that one needs to accomplish to secure our OT environments and practically make a difference there. And I'm honored to be joined this morning by Goran Novkovic. I'll do a very brief intro and then I'll let him introduce himself. Goran's been doing this for over 20 years, OT and ICS security, and has built programs in a variety of places, both in brownfield, client situations, as well as greenfield organizations where they're just building new infrastructure. So Goran, you want to do just a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, John, and thanks for inviting me. It's really my honor to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Again, my name is Goran Novkovic, and I'm head of Industrial Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Protection with NEOM in Saudi Arabia. If you don't know what NEOM is, just go at neom.com. It's probably the largest global project right now that we have in the world. So yeah, that's about me shortly.
Great, and thank you very much for being here. And for those of you who may not know me, I'm John Livingston. I'm the CEO of Verve. I've been here for about 7 years in the industrial controls security space. Prior to that, I spent about 20 years at McKinsey helping clients go through digital transformations and that sort of thing. Just by way of background of who we are as Verve, and we're not going to really spend much time on Verve today at all, but just for context purposes, Verve has been an industrial controls or OT engineering firm for about 30 years. And about 15 years ago, we built a software platform that helps organizations manage their OT cybersecurity, prioritize risks, remediate those risks, et cetera. And then we provide a range of services to help clients build programs like this, do remediation, network segmentation, managing their security, et cetera. But primarily what we're here today is to hear from Goran and listen to him and what some of his experiences have been over the past 20 or 25 years in building these programs. And so the way we're going to do this today is we're going to talk through a range of topics. These are the ones that are on our list. I'm not sure we're going to get to all of them. Goran and I have talked a little bit offline. We'll see if we can get to everything. And the way we're going to do it is I'm going to sort of set up the topic and then ask Goran to share some of his experiences and views based on his experience. And those topics are going to range from, how do you get buy-in to doing one of these, to really getting OT security going? How do you think about stages of a program? What kind of frameworks do you use, et cetera? And then work through some of the particulars of those policies and procedures. How do you prioritize risks? How do you think about network protections, et cetera? So with that, I think we'll just go ahead and dive in. Let me start with this first one, Goran. So I know from personal experience that we work with many clients and they're just getting started and there may not be the right level of commitment of the board of directors or senior management to the OT security space. They may have done a lot on IT security, but there's no compliance requirements yet. And so perhaps there's no buy-in. I'd love your perspective. How have you found it? How have you found ways of creating that buy-in and driving change, I guess I'll call it, within the organization around investing in this area?
Well, John, I have to say that, you probably want to start discussion with the most difficult question, actually. And after 20-something years, I probably don't have the answer. Actually, I can tell you it's equally hard from end user perspective as much as, from, let's say, perspective of consultants, right? So I have to say that, like, usually, like, even from end user perspective, like, it very realistically, it's very hard to do so. I did not find the perfect recipe so far, and I think it's extremely hard, no matter actually how much experience you have or how good your business case is, because, like, all of us of OT, IoT, cybersecurity space, we know what needs to be done, but like, commonly, and I don't know is that my destiny or not, but like, you commonly, when you get a new job, new role, people ask you, hey, I want to build OT or industrial cybersecurity practice, and you get in and you're all excited actually that you will come with a list of projects and you will do industrial cybersecurity program and so on and so on. But I don't know, maybe other people have different experience. Usually difficulty is not on your side and your expertise. I find difficulties that actually even people who brought you in, they are not actually having, I would say, the best understanding of OT, IoT, or industrial cybersecurity and what exactly needs to be done. And usually, let's say, if you end up with a CISO office or any other office, like, it's always you have a very big IT security team, and even, let's say, leadership has a much better understanding of IT security, and let's say ultimately CISO or CSO is coming from, let's say, IT security space. So you need to start doing actually internal lobbying. You need to start explaining, like, why OT cybersecurity is important and why, let's say, every organization should have industrial cybersecurity program and not copy paste IT cybersecurity program. So you need to do internal education and so on. But what I also found very interesting is that if we're talking about, let's say, security budget that organization have, like, and all those, let's say, cybersecurity departments commonly looking and manage IT and OT, and then, like, you actually get all the list of IT and OT projects and priorities. And although I feel actually that we need to start, let's say, for a greenfield environment, you need to start building your, let's say, industrial cybersecurity program, capabilities, and so on. Ultimately, because your, let's say, management that you work with has a better understanding in IT space than OT, I commonly find that actually they maybe not intentionally, but they always put a favor into IT initiatives versus OT. Like in initiatives. And I find that as a very time consuming, and I would say obstacle, either to kind of start building all those programs that are much needed. Again, and on maybe other aspect is, I find that I had the better success actually to do internal sales and get projects in place. To be honest, if I talk to CTOs or technology people and asset owners or even GRC people who are on the top of the organization, who ultimately don't understand OT, but they don't maybe ultimately understand IT. So when you talk about business risk and business perspective on why those OT projects should be implemented, I feel actually that those people are more taking more objective view and actually accept that, like, you know, your initiatives from OT side are actually at least equally important, like, you know, as much as IT.
Yeah.
Especially even if you connect with critical infrastructure protection, that we know that actually majority of critical infrastructure has those OT IoT system that needed to be protected and so on. So bottom line is not even a business case. I think actually you need to do many different things: education, negotiation, influencing, and so on, to actually fight for those OT security initiatives and projects that you want to put.
So there's a follow-up question from the audience here around does tying OT into a safety or health and safety requirements work in your experience?
Actually, that's interesting question. And although we all kind of know that people say, hey, like, you know, if we connect security with safety, that, like, you know, you will have a better chance. And I try all those things, but I found that even if you start talking about, like, you know, those kind of consequences of cyber attacks on the critical infrastructure, and you might have, like, you know, safety issues, you might have environmental issues, like, you know, deaths, like, you know, injuries and so on. I found that, like, you know, that approach to scare and then sell, it actually does not work well. I tried that many times, and I don't want to go into even regions. I even found that that story works for certain regions around the globe, but I also found there are certain countries or certain regions that those kind of saying, hey, safety is number one. If you don't do that, it will be some major consequences. So I still find that the best recipe is to kind of make a case why those cybersecurity or industrial cybersecurity initiatives should be implemented. And I really believe, and I hope actually people who are listening this, I commonly like to use approach actually that if you take that kind of operational perspective and you consider cybersecurity as a quality or as a hygiene or as a good housekeeping practice, which means that, like, you know, you will be able to understand your environment, you will be able to document everything, you will consolidate everything, you will understand what needs to be protected and like critical areas and so on, that you will be in a better situation to say, okay, if we do those things, we are not only helping us or you from cybersecurity perspective, but we are actually increasing our capabilities and our knowledge to be able to make our operation better. So how cybersecurity will enable or improve
operations
business. Yeah. You know, I find that works very well if you say, okay, if you do this, I can prove that there is a tangible KPI because I might reduce downtime. I might be able to improve operation. So not ultimately that you say, okay, if we don't do that, something really bad will gonna happen. And, like, you know, if you don't understand, like, it's a problem. I believe that there is a common ground between cybersecurity and business, so that actually cybersecurity again can be seen as an enabler of business.
Great, thank you, thank you. Let's move to the next topic area here. I'm going to go back and share my screen for a second. So the next topic is, how do you actually go through a program? This is a chart that we have used in the past to essentially think about kind of the NIST CSF along one dimension of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And then across these three phases that an organization needs to first assess the environment, prioritize the risks, develop the roadmap. Then there's usually some form of kind of one-time step change in security. And then there's a maintenance phase where, whether it be vulnerabilities and risks, whether it be, threats emerging into the environment, that these broad steps are typically what organizations go through. But would love your reaction to this. Does this make sense to you? Have you thought about it in different ways? How do you think about, I guess, setting up the sequence of how a program will work?
Yeah, so like, since I executed a couple of those programs, again, I saw many different approaches, and like, I saw even many programs actually that, like, investment into them have been made, but like, programs that are actually again are not actually fit for purpose into operation and the business, that actually by the programs that actually you creating a silo between cybersecurity function and operational function. So first thing is that actually when you start architecturing your programs and what needs to be a part of the program, I think actually that kind of connection with the business, with operation has to exist, because at the end of the day, we know that, like, operation is critical part of every business, right? And then we say that industrial cybersecurity is critical part of every operation. And then at the end of the day, our mission, we can call that, is to protect operation. So when you say that, like, when we say that, okay, we have to develop, let's say, OT security program, what does it mean? And actually I would ask, like, tell me, why do you need that? So to me, everything starts with those industrial cybersecurity or OT security solutions. And actually, I think that goes in line with your steps. I think actually that every solution needs to have those three fundamental capabilities, right? I would divide that simple as prevention, detection, response. And that's actually creates your cybersecurity solution. And that solution you want to manage by OT cybersecurity program. So the problem is, again, I saw many nice programs with all the policies, procedures, standards, guidelines, and so on, but actually they're creating obstacle for business. Nobody actually tested them. They're created in isolation. They're not actually connected to business. So what I advise anyone, and like, maybe some people will don't even like what I'm saying or disagree, because I'm taking a little bit different approach that market is promoting. If you want to build your solution for any type of operation, any type of organization, environment, and so on, what is needed? It is needed, how I call that, OT/IoT, or operational visibility. So what I mean by that, it's not network visibility, it's not control system visibility. It's actually understanding your operations, including people, process, technology. Because think this way, you want to build a house, or you want to design something. Like, you cannot jump into creating solutions and putting controls if you don't understand environment. So to me, I still don't know why cybersecurity practices, even globally, is not taking more that operational perspective and consider that cybersecurity has to go tight with operation, because many operational functions, as good asset management, patch management, all those things, are actually, we have done it even in operation many years ago, when we even didn't talk about cybersecurity. And all those things are helping operation and helping us in a cybersecurity. To me, I also, in a program, I would start with the key elements. And maybe when I was younger, I was more into what kind of tools we're gonna have, and I wanna play with the software and hardware and so on, which is actually more mature I am. I actually found at that kind of late stage of my career that actually I believe governance is actually the ultimately and maybe the most important thing above of any other initiative. Because I found that even if you put technology, even if you start developing something, I did not see in many organizations that actually there is a clear roles and responsibilities. Again, I'm talking about that operational experience, not that okay, governance, they have a committee and we will meet each other and so on. No, I'm actually talking about governance that really going to level 0. I need to know configuration and who will replace devices, and I want to understand the whole organization. And I can even give you some of the elements. Let's say in a typical program, what I usually see, yes, this is that GRC. I don't know if we will have a chance to talk about the risk management. I also, I'm very cautious with the risk management and how you want to especially identify risk in those OT/IoT environments.
Yeah, that's one of the topics,
which is very unique. Also, compliance, like a GRC, right? To understand what needs to be done. Although if you target that all you will gonna do is to satisfy all those controls that some compliance requirements said, you're probably not doing enough, and you're probably not doing a good job. And I like to kind of overshoot, to take care about security of operation, not of kind of compliance. Then I found very important that, let's say, knowledge management. I also found that change management within a program is extremely important. Let's say that that OT environment is very dynamic. So you have a people, process, technology. People are making changes. Technology is changing some upgrades, and those things. And you have let's say processes, how you're gonna manage this, so all those changes actually goes into that visibility that I said. Really, visibility to me means understanding of the environment, that you actually constantly need to be on the top of those changes and to constantly
Keep
keep
track
that.
of it. Yep.
Yes, so to be able again to even build those detection and even prevention capabilities, because if you don't understand and you don't see those changes and you don't know what they are, probably your detection and response capabilities will not do well. And the end, when I speak about prevention, detection, response, a program needs to cover all three capabilities. You cannot focus on only one, because you will not be able to protect your environment. And of course, it's probably not reinventing the wheel. I see disaster stories with disaster recovery, with incident response, business continuity. And since we all like to talk about emerging technologies, Industry 4.0, and so on, I also found that more intelligent your environment is, your operation is, you will probably have a harder time to do incident response and so on, just because you focused on a cybersecurity. You did not focus on operational side. And then you say, okay, now we have all intelligent, but we don't have intelligence to recover, and it takes weeks maybe to recover.
So one of the questions that came up here is a question around policies and procedures, and how much you use IT versus OT. This is something that we typically put together in one of our assessments that we do, where we look at kind of the key policy areas that you might have, and then work through, okay, how good is that policy in a pure IT setting? How appropriate is it in an OT setting? And then, from an implementation point of view at the plant, how implemented is that policy? But maybe stepping away from the individual elements of this in terms of the specifics of each policy area, the question came up, how do you think about IT versus OT policies? And can you use IT policies and just port them over? Do you need new, I'll quote the question, should you build separate policies? And if the rules from IT security, which are covering IT, can be applied, should another policy be built, or should we just map the policies? What's your perspective on, kind of broadly the question of policy development?
Well, yes, so let me tell you, I don't gonna kind of make a comment as kind of everything that IT does, it's not applicable into OT. And because we as OT cybersecurity professionals, we can learn a lot from IT side. And you also know that many things that are actually in our environment, let's say level 2 and up, there's a lot of computers and servers and networking and so on. I would say that many of those IT policies, procedures, and so on, it cannot be copy paste. You need to have knowledge and again visibility, understanding of environment, and to customize for your specific environment. So I'm okay that you start looking into IT policies, because a lot of time we need to provide a certain coverage of those kind of, okay, what's needed, what kind of standards we need and procedures and so on. But I would not ultimately take everything that IT developed and put in OT. In fact, that's one of the problems that and the question that you made at the beginning. I heard many times that people want to make a shortcuts, actually CISO and executives, and say, hey, why you don't take those IT policies or IT program and just implement in OT? Why you need to develop everything from scratch and so on. So this is one side. Another side, if you think that why you even putting efforts to develop, let's say, industrial cybersecurity program or OT or however you want to call it, if actually somebody already developed that in the past,
Right.
just copy paste, right? It doesn't work like that, because it's not because consultants will not have anything to do and so on. But also and you see, I'm constantly going back to visibility and understanding. We all know that even two factories that are making the same product are never the same. Two organizations are never the same. Two systems are never the same. So what you need to do, not just copy paste IT into OT, but you cannot copy paste between OTs. So it's very important that all your cybersecurity solutions, cybersecurity programs, including all the policies, procedures, and so on, are actually tailored for your specific environment. And don't try to kind of come up with so many of those kind of procedures and standard. You actually, at the end of the day, again, I'm taking always operational perspective. Come with those things that you will implement in your environment, in your plant, that will help your organization to do the better job, to understand and so on. So act as a additional quality assurance, or however, that actually you will protect your organization from those, not just cybersecurity, but those operational risks. Because again, the same procedures you might find all, and same topics you might find in operation that already exists. Let's say, again, I don't know, but let's say, let me give you example, patch management. You see, many people, and I don't know, but think that actually patch management is coming with cybersecurity. And it's kind of interesting to me that you only implement patch because now you have cybersecurity. I actually did the patches in early 2000 because I need to enable some function on VFD, on PLC, and so on. So patches are actually part of operation. This is not even cyber thing. Right? So be very careful, and be very mindful what policies and procedures and standards and guidelines you will put in your environment. And I would love you to work with engineers, with operation and other functions to actually enable that IT/OT communication comparison, because at the end of the day, cybersecurity should not be seen as isolated, extracted function. It should be part of the operation.
Well, let me actually pick up on that.
Hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Let me pick up on that topic. So, we often hear of the challenges of IT and OT and their different mindsets, right? We've phrased this as, IT is from Mars and OT is from
Yeah,
Venus, like
Venus.
that old book. I guess, one is obviously, you can scan stuff, you patch every Tuesday, et cetera. And on the other side, we obviously do things differently. How have you found a way, as you talk about it operationally, to bring those groups together, to make a marriage work between Mars and Venus?
Well, I think that's kind of historical issue, right? You have IT teams that are actually maybe recently even came into position to kind of, hey, we need to secure your environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have those engineers, operational team that they say, oh, those people are so grumpy and rude to us, that we want to protect their environment. You see, that's nothing wrong with IT or other side, although I have never really been on IT side, so I cannot make a proper comment. But I actually think sharing the same mission and actually trying to eliminate that silo, and actually IT can learn about control systems and OT about IT and so on. I think that actually that knowledge sharing around the same mission and the same goals is actually very helpful. Secondly, if we go to very hands-on, there are certain methodologies that I'm actually implementing. I always like to ensure that actually whatever OT is doing, IT sees that, and whatever IT is doing, OT sees, so that actually they have that kind of, I call it, unified view into OT IoT environment, so that actually they see the same information, they see the same data, they kind of understand what is going on into environment. And maybe this is kind of outside of topic, even when the let's say cybersecurity function is building, I don't know, OT SOC or hybrid IT OT SOC, at the end of the day, I like to ensure actually that this is not only for kind of cybersecurity monitoring and detecting, but also that even those SOC function actually provide that intelligence and loop back into operation and share intel with people on a factory floor.
Almost
so on.
almost a NOC, a network operating center, as much as it is a security.
To have that kind of ecosystems that they sharing a common view, they sharing a common knowledge, because I don't see why the problem is that engineers and OT sees what IT is doing. I don't see issue, and I don't see issue why IT should not know what OT is doing.
But do you think one of the questions that always comes up in that is, okay, I'm okay, I'm the OT person, I'm okay with IT seeing it, but what I don't want to do is to have IT managing my switches in my plant, as an example, right? Because they're going to make some change while I'm running, and it's going to screw everything up, and I'm not going to know what they did, et cetera. I guess what I'm hearing you say is visibility, maybe not actionability.
Yeah, all those things, at the end of the day, we can call as read only, right? You have all the, you have that visibility, you have all the configs, you can now, in many companies, and that's kind of what I'm using more and more, using, let's say, ML, AI, analytics, DTs, like, things like, around augmented reality and like, so on, just to kind of whatever I do from cybersecurity function, I actually give extra value back into operation. So yes, you need to make sure that whatever you even monitor or whatever you're doing into in OT environments, yes, it cannot impact operation, and that's why you want to ensure that there is no anyone or any team or anyone that's kind of suspicious. Hey, like, I think this happened because IT is, I don't know, scanning our network. Although, like, I have seen those things, like, where IT bought a new tool and they're scanning entire network.
Next thing you know, the PLCs get bricked,
and the SCADA just like, like, so those things. So I feel that transparency and that common view and data sharing and knowledge will definitely eliminate those kind of silos and lack of trust or anything that actually for decades now exist between, let's say, those themes.
Yeah, so this is a chart that we've used with our clients around how to structure this, and I think I'm putting it back up here because I think it ties into what you're saying. So the notion of what we call think global, act local. So great, let's get visibility centralized. Let's use your AI. Let's prioritize, build playbooks, et cetera. But as we think about actually taking actions, let's make sure that the plant folks, whether it be plant IT or the engineers at the plant, the folks, in pharma, for instance, the quality engineers, are involved in actually taking any actions in that environment. Is that, I guess, just from a graphical point, does that make sense to you in terms of kind of what you're saying? Or by the way, does it not? Would you react differently to this?
John, no, no, I'm just kidding.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
No. Like, this is actually completely kind of what kind of approach I like to take, because again, I may be kind of still excited about, like, initiatives and kind of trying to make improvements and innovate and so on and so on. But at the same time, I really feel that market, generally speaking, is not actually trying to understand environment again before they implementing technology and tools and software and hardware. And I don't want to blame anyone, but like, looks like that we have a very tool driven market, because if you know what I said, our mission is to protect the operation, right? Business. What is going on? Everybody's saying, okay, I want to protect the operation, right? But the next step, they ultimately say, okay, let me check if you have asset inventory. Let me implement tool and see what's going on the network. The problem is, we are not protecting end devices. We are not protecting networks. We are protecting operation. So this is in line with your approach. If you look at operation, I like to take from a bigger picture. It is maybe like, looks like time consuming, or maybe somebody would say it's kind of overkill, but it's not. Because in operation, if you look at any bigger company, you have operational sites, right? And then with every site is different, and every site has maybe 1 or 2 operational processes. And then within operational processes, if you want to talk about risk or inventory and so on, you have those operational systems. And those operational systems all together create operational process. And then those operational systems are actually ran on industrial control systems. And then on those control systems, you have what market call assets. I call devices, because those devices are actually, each of them is actually doing something. How many times IT or cybersecurity function said, okay, I use my tool, I see that device is somewhere in the field, but do you know what that device does? Do you know what will happen if I cut
that
the
breaks.
cable
Yeah.
and like, you know, what will gonna happen? Secondly, rough reality is that not all devices are on the network. Not all of them are on IP networks. And since we all say safety first, how many are infrastructure we actually have that safety devices, which are, we know by many regulations, are not part of ICS. They're actually isolated, and those devices are hardwired. So how we protecting operation and taking care about safety if we are from the whole operation that you're saying you want to protect, you're focusing on ICS systems that are connect only that are part of the network and devices that are on the network. We are actually by, I don't know why, but we are limiting ourselves and focusing on protecting devices and networks versus protecting operations. So what you're saying, John, and what you put is a completely makes sense. And I sometimes feel that either is coming kind of from market and somebody's interest, I don't know, but we need to go back to basic, like, you know, I don't need to know even what threats are and like, you know, all those things. If I understand my devices, if I understand my network systems, interlocks, messaging, like, you know, what's helps you to, like, you know, implement different controls that actually will make your environment more robust, resilient, and secure, even if you don't know anything what's going on, like, you know, for threats. Like, you know,
absolutely.
I think that we are waiting for something and say, okay, we need the budget, we need this, or we don't have a skill set and so on. I feel that many things can be done, and if we are just kind of say, okay, let's take the same operation, how SCADA ran for many decades, let's do the same, and let's just do something, because even something will gonna help.
I'm gonna share one more page here because it's a chart. This is not our data. It's directly out of the NIST's database. So the U.S. National Institute of Science and Technology has this database called CyberSeek, and CyberSeek is a database of all the cybersecurity jobs that are open, and then they break them down by task. So what does that job description include? And to your point, we hear a lot in the press, in, frankly, companies' marketing around the stuff at the bottom of the page, right? Big data and analyze data from threat feeds, you know, attribution analysis, et cetera. But when you actually look at what are the tasks, like what is everybody doing? You know, almost 80% of it is what we would call systems management, right? It's the old, if it was an IT, it would be ITSM. In OT, we call it OTSM, right? It's patch management, it's configuration management, it's what I'm hearing you say, it's the basics, right? It's the basics of how are we going to provision a new device? How do we set up our network? How do we make it run effectively? I think it just goes to your point. This is not rocket science, right? This is ops, right? In a way that, you know, what is OT security? It's operations. And we've been doing operations for years. How do we just, you know, advance it a little bit? Because we may not have been really thinking hard about, you know, regular change management and configuration management, you know, changes get made, et cetera. Any reactions to these skills?
Well, you're absolutely right. I want to see companies go back to basic, as you said, and go back to operation, because again, many of those things are even hard to define. Is that cybersecurity activity or operational activity? But anything that you do, and no matter where you can group it, if that's like, you know, support your operation and support your knowledge and intelligence that you have, it will definitely be helpful. Even when I try to explain somebody, almost cybersecurity can be like some sort of quality practice, quality assurance, or maybe even you can say, hey, those are good housekeeping practices if you do certain things. And again, like, you know, you can almost look at each level of Purdue model and analyze what has been done. Like, you can talk about like a sensor, field devices, think about like, you know, will you have everything documented, baseline? Do you know who's making changes? Do you know, like, you know, what the protocol they use, a software version, like, you know, do you know if you need a spare part, like, you know, on shelf or not? Like, you know, you can go to each layer and you can kind of do something that, like, you know, you don't have to ask if it's cyber or it's not. When you mention on the media and stuff, yeah, of course, like, you know, we are constantly, I guess, because market, we're constantly looking at those threats, and even if there is no cyber attack, we say, okay, there is no cyber attack, but if those things happen, we need to get prepared and we need to do those things. I still don't want that the whole market and industrial cybersecurity end up with kind of, let's look at the threats and what can happen, and let's kind of, like, you know, start hunt or continue hunt for vulnerabilities, especially at those level 1 and 0, and kind of say, okay, there is new vulnerability discovered by XYZ, so you have to do the patching. I'm not against the patching, but, like, you know, if all you have to do is to hunt for vulnerabilities and do the patching and get scared what will gonna happen, you'll probably not do those essential hygiene housekeeping practices to prepare you in environment for whatever happen, you will be in a better position. Sometimes even maybe I go too far, but sometimes I say, hey, like, you know, if your solution, if you're not in a position to tell me if something happened, why happened, and to tell me if this was, let's say, equipment failure, human error, or cyber attack, you probably have more things to do, because I'm sure that you will not be able to say if it's cyber attack if you cannot tell me who
if it's
made
not an operational change.
Yes,
Yeah.
if somebody last night did not bypass alarm or replace a part, you know, you don't know, you're guessing. So you don't have that, what I call visibility.
Operational visibility. Yeah.
To me, that's the basic. And since we are kind of at the end, I really encourage everyone, start learning about your environment, start digging into every piece or every corner, and you will learn, and then it's almost logical. You will know what you need to do. Like, you don't have to, focus only on one thing or only on the
Right.
policies or compliance. You will simply, by having understanding, you will put the priorities and put your investments in the right corners.
But it's kind of a funny dichotomy in some ways, because in some ways you're saying it's straightforward. It's easy in a way, right? Once you understand the process, you can solve it. But if I come at this and I'm a security person, I'm the IT security person who's been assigned, you're now going to do OT security, and you've never been in a plant and you don't know anything about your product. Now we're saying, and by the way, I agree with you, you got to go out there. You got to go get the OT people, get those controls engineers, and you got to get them in a room. And then you need to go out to the plant and you need to walk it. And you need to get them to explain to you, how does the process work? If that breaks, what happens? Is that connected to that? And obviously, as we all know, right, even when you do that, those people may not know, right? How many times have we done assessments when you go in and they say, yeah, nothing's connected to IT. And then you put in, and all of a sudden you find, yeah, all sorts of things are connected to IT. So it's easy and hard, meaning it makes, once you understand the process, you can then focus, and it becomes, the trick is you have to invest the time to understand the process and work with those engineers to truly learn it.
Absolutely right, John. That's why one of the things that I always have in those OT security programs is that knowledge management. Like, what training, what knowledge, what field experience is necessary, not only OT or IT, but anyone, like, who needs to understand the data. And I can give you even examples that, like, once you understand your processes, your operation, funny enough, like, you have people that are coming from a quality function for sales, marketing, and so on, and say, hey, can you give me some data? Oh yeah, of course. Like, I have data about everything, because I did not focus only on the devices on the network and monitoring the networks, because many things will happen and might happen outside of those networks. So you really focus on your operation. You're kind of creating that center of intelligence. Like, you have information that maybe to actually enable the entire organization to build, to actually have a visibility and data that you might not even think they need. But like, sometimes they ask you about some data and say, actually, in fact, I have, because I'm taking very comprehensive approach. I'm interested to understand the operation, because it helps me from cybersecurity perspective to be able to focus on certain controls that I implement to actually make sure that those are effective and really, like, fit. Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us today. I found it really interesting. I hope the folks joining did as well, but it was really, really interesting. For those of you who are here, we're going to be talking through this same topic again in a few hours. If you'd like to rejoin, I'm sure it's going to only be 50% overlap, because questions will come in. So anyway, we really appreciate your time, Goran. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.